and welcome back.
Thank you
But
so much.
anyway, you're listed as a political activist. And in our Emerald Planet, we don't do things in politics, religion, and all that. We just go follow the science.
Okay.
But I know that you have a fantastic background and you really are reaching out in a very realistic way to others. So most everyone knows you. So the bio has actually been posted. I don't want to take your time, but we are exactly on 2 minutes late, but we'll make up. But anyway, Frank, thank you for being with us. And why don't you please start and kick us off?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure for me to have this wonderful opportunity to be sharing, to be presenting with all of you. Actually, I feel very humble because I'm surrounded with great minds and I'm amazed by the things that I'm hearing and the variety of these panels. And I was given the task to talk about the African youth and also the COVID-19 right now and what we will envision in the future with that African youth. As you know, the COVID-19 started in China and it spread like wildfire. And we can really see that what happened somewhere will affect the entire world because what happened in China not only did not stay in China, but affect the whole world, but it also it slowed down most of the most powerful economy in the world. So if you can imagine that in the United States, in Europe, they were having some serious problem, you can imagine what was happening in Africa. So I would like to discuss a little bit about this, to the COVID-19, what the effect of the COVID-19 in Africa, and together we will see what I believe that the youth of Africa could do in the future. As we know, when the COVID-19 struck in Europe and in America, we noticed that there was a lack of supplies and the healthcare system was overwhelmed. You can guess it was exactly the same thing, even worse in Africa. We realized that actually our health system was poorly run and in such a way that they were not able to test people. They were not able to be proactive. And so what happened is that our governments, I mean, African governments, were following what European governments or what the West was doing without taking in account the reality in the ground. Like, for example, in order for the disease not to spread, they have decided that they will confine people. So they decided also in Africa that most countries should confine. The problem is in Africa, somebody works today in order to nourish his family tomorrow. So if they do not work today, then they won't be able to take care of their family tomorrow, and that is a serious problem. So I'm here to say that one of the major problems is that government is completely disconnected with the African youth. As a matter of fact, the youth are so advanced compared to the government that I believe today that government are out of touch. And the problem is that all our institutions that were supposed to protect the African youth, were supposed to allow the African to express themselves and to be really free and to participate fully, not only in the African economy, but in the world economy. This is not possible simply because we have a disconnect between our leadership and the African youth. Now, it is important for us to understand that disease, COVID-19, is a very lethal disease, but I do know that, for example, in England, the Prime Minister of England had COVID-19, but he went to the hospital and fortunately for him, he was able to recover and now he's completely operational and serve his country well. In Africa, we also had ministers who were affected by this disease, the COVID-19. Unfortunately, some of them died. And why did they die? They died because the health system in those countries are not good. And because they did not have the opportunity to fly to another country because all the borders were closed, then they were victim of what the people know every day or what the people were experiencing every day. So I'm here to say that you have an African youth that is that wants to change things, and they are not expecting any more things from the West. Actually, we have great ideas. We believe that the solution that we're looking for are within, that we can find solution within the continent, The problem is everybody want to decide for us and want to impose us things, when actually you have a ripe generation of young Africans who have ideas. They have ideas because of the internet, Twitter, Facebook, and because they are able to go online to get educated. So they see what's going on in other countries, and they want to not only emulate, but to accommodate what they see to their own reality. But unfortunately, we have governments who are only catering to a certain group of people, and their youth is there and actually left by themselves, not knowing exactly what to do. So I'm very pleased to see that right now, when you look at the United States, for example, the youth are rising up and they are condemning what's going on, for example, with the George Floyd issue. And when I see that, I realize that the threat of justice somewhere, I mean, the presence of injustice somewhere is the threat of justice anywhere. And more, the young people everywhere agreed that when there is an issue somewhere in the world, it needs to be addressed, because at the end of the day, we are all human. And if we do not take care of the issue in a particular area of the world, it will come and haunt us. So I know that today, especially in America and even in Europe, you have a lot of Caucasian citizens who are very young, who are rising up, and they are against that systematic racism. And I believe deeply in my heart that they are against it because not only they know it's wrong, but they know that if these things is not being checked, it will come and do that probably to their children in a distant future. So we need to resolve human problem, because if we don't, it will come and bite us. And we can see that also, for example, with when Hitler started to target blacks first, the rest of the world didn't say anything because it was the Africans. He was degrading the Africans. So then the Jews and all the other people didn't care about until it came to them. So what I'm here to say is that the struggle that the African community, and particularly the youth, are doing is for the betterment of the whole world. So what COVID-19 has unfolded, it has unfolded that African youth has a dream because they've been confined. And in that confinement, of course, they are thinking, and there is now a desire of not becoming like other people, but to redefine who we are as a people. And actually, Pan-Africanism is becoming very strong now in the mind of young Africans, because they realize that as we come together, as we try to find a solution together, we will be able to solve the different problems that Africa is encountering. Now, there's a lot of things that are going for us, because as you all know, the African population is growing, and is growing rapidly. It is proven that we will be, and that we are, the youngest population in the face of the earth. So what are we going to do with all those young people? What are we going to do? We need to create jobs with those young people. Today, every country seems to want to close their borders. They don't want Africans to come to their countries. I think that one of the ways that we can solve immigration issues, for example, is to create an environment where Africans can stay in their own country. And for that, I believe that we need to have rule of laws. I believe that we need to have good governance. I believe that we need to have legitimate governments. Too many governments in Africa today are not legitimate. They are there against the will of their people. Now, let me give you some of the figures. It is said that in 2030, there will be approximately 370 million young Africans that will be put into the job market. This number of people represent the whole population of the United States plus the population of Canada. So I'm talking about all Northern America will be dumped into Africa and be looking for work. So it is important that the world is watching what's going on, and jobs need to be created, environment need to be created, because that youth that is full of dreams and full of aspiration want to be able to achieve, like any other people in the world, their dreams. And of course, if they're not allowed to dream in their own continent, they will have to go abroad. They will have to come to your place. And now we realize more and more that we do not want individualism. No, we want to be who we are, and we understand that we are different people with different background, with different culture, with different languages, and we like it like that. We do not want to be uniform, but we do want to learn to cohabit together and to work together and to make a better Africa. But in order for us to do that, we need to have control of government, and we need to have control of our economy. Unfortunately, African governments are too much controlled by the West, and they are too much, and the economy are too much controlled by the West, serving the interests of everybody else except us, the African. And this needs to change. One of the other things that I noticed is that Africans nowadays want to have good hospital in their own continent. They don't want to take all the time a plane to come to Europe or to the United States in order for them to have healthcare. No, they want to be able to have that in their own land. They want to be able to have jobs in their own land. But unfortunately, our resources are taken from our continent and are being used in other continents for the benefit of other people, and we are left behind. So what Africans are decided to do is to follow where their wealth and their resources are going, because it's going to Europe, it's going to America, then of course, and China and Asia, of course, they will follow their resources. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the African youth today realize that, yes, the mineral that is used to make the cell phone come from, mostly 70% of it come from Africa. So therefore, they want also to have a part of it because it's coming from the continent. Therefore, Africans should benefit from it first because it's coming from us. And so we need to reform our government. We need to reform the way we're thinking our economy. And I think if the West want to help the African youth, the best way to do it is to create a bridge, a direct bridge between the West and that youth. Because when they go through government, what is happening is that that money never go down. It never trickle down. It's just stay there, and it's creating oligarchy. People who actually are controlling and are not allowing their people to dream. So it is important also to know that even though the African population is very young, it's very, very young, we are not represented in government. Nowadays, I would say the youngest president in Africa probably is 55 years old, and the oldest probably 80 or 75 years old.
Frank,
and that's
5 more minutes.
Okay, and that is unacceptable because the African 70% of the African population is under the age of 30. So I'm here to say that in the year 2050, 1/3 of the youth will be African. So we need to find a way to create an environment where Africans can develop themselves and can be themselves and can enjoy fully of their continent. And like I said, we are willing to share with everybody in the world. We are willing to share our wealth. That's not the issue. But the issue is we are not willing to that people will take resources out of Africa at our expense. So this is what I wanted to share with you. COVID-19 is a very serious problem, and it reveals that when it affects one community, it will affect all the other communities. So it is important that we resolve that issue as a human issue. It's not a Caucasian or a white issue or a black issue or an African issue. It's a human problem. So as human beings, we need to resolve it. And I think also we need to change the perception of how we see Africans. We are all created equal before God, and we all desire life, and we all want liberty and also the pursuit of happiness. And I think that as African youth will take their rightful place, and the African continent will take its rightful place in the global economy, I really believe in my heart that the world will be better. It will be a better place. The world will be a more peaceful place, and it will be a more stable place. And after saying this, I will yield my time. Thank you so much for listening.
Frank, you finished a few minutes early. We're going to share that with Dr. Malcolm Beach in just a minute, but thank you for your very enthusiastic and fact-filled information about youth on the continent. And it's something that the world is just going to have to face because it is the youngest emerging population on the planet. And if you feel, just look at the statistic, about 850 million on the African continent about 5+ years ago. Now it's 1.2 billion, 1.2 billion. So if you look at the expansion of youth just within that short period of time, it's a very, very real dynamic. And I know that Dr. Malcolm Beach is going to be talking about this, looking at jobs, businesses creation. He has a very outstanding business background, well educated, and actually I'm right down the road from where he graduated at the National Law School of George Washington University. So Dr. Beach, welcome, and please